Welcome to Forbidden Planet TV. I'm Andrew Sumner. I am joined once again by the one and only Sean Phillips and the one and only Ed Brubaker. How are you, gents?
We're fine, thank you. Yep.
Excellent.
Great.
Good to see you both. Good to see you both. You're coming off the back of a very interesting second half of 2023 because you had the almost rapturous response to Night Fever, which must have felt very good for you both.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
People seem to really dig it. It was a really different kind of weird book for us, and it seemed to be the right left turn at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's one of those books that everybody I know that I sent a copy to or recommended it to, everybody really loved it, you know. And this is people from all over the spectrum of people who read comics and don't read comics. Interestingly, what somebody said to me, I had a friend of mine in Arizona that I sent it to, and they were like, "It's one of the reasons that you've responded so positively to this is the protagonist essentially does the same job as yourself." Which is someone I hadn't even thought about, but it's absolutely right. Somebody works in publishing rights, and I was like, man, that didn't even cross my mind, but it is true.
Yeah, I did no research. I didn't have to. I've talked to my foreign sales agent enough over the years.
And that's a glorious place to be. So
Yeah.
you're here to talk about your new book, which in the UK is just about to be released, which is Where the Body Was. So what can you tell me about the concept, guys?
This one sort of started from the map, like the inside, what do you call that? The end papers. The end papers. Yeah, the end papers has a map of the street on it. And that was like where the initial idea sprung from. I had ideas for 3 or 4 different stories that I'd never really figured out a way to use in any of our books before. And I suddenly got obsessed with the idea of doing one of those like books. I think because Night Fever was so much like inside one person's mind, I wanted to do something that felt like the opposite of that was like a story in daytime in the suburbs and told from a bunch of different points of view. And then I just was like moving some books around and I found like an old Dell Mapback book. And I just thought, oh, what if we did something like that? And then and then I thought, oh, the end papers could be like a map, or we could have a big double-page spread at the beginning that's like a map of the street, and then started like working on that. And it was kind of a bolt of inspiration. I think I spent like 3 days just filling up an entire notebook with like all the different characters and what their storylines would be and how they would play out. And I didn't figure out how they would intertwine around each other until I was actually writing the script, but I knew there's probably like 20 pages more of stuff that didn't make it into the book that was like in my ideas for the book. Yeah. There was going to be a whole other thing with the private eye that never happened.
It's so interesting. I think it's as I was saying off camera, one of the things I love about this book is the Brubaker and Phillips monopoly board of it, if you will. Yeah. Sean, what was it like? Did you have it feels very rooted in a place because of that end paper, that map that introduced the whole thing. Is that something you were conscious of that affected the way you illustrated the book?
Oh yeah, I mean, it started off. Ed's wife did a drawing of the map, like a rough overhead shot of the streets and stuff. Because I don't know anything about American suburbs. I've never been in one, so it's all new to me. And then we just worked from that. I did a more detailed version of that. I found someone to build me a 3D model in CGI. Yeah. So I could use that as a set. And I could then place the camera wherever I needed to place it, take a screen grab and draw from that. So that was really
amazing
useful
to see, like all the houses always in the exact, like seeing where everybody was, you always knew in the location.
Yeah, it made it so much easier.
Pencils.
And it made it I drew loads more backgrounds than I usually bother, because usually I don't, I'd think of ways around it, but this time I could just do that. The guy built me the main house in the story, the Victorian boarding house. He built me a really detailed model of that, and all the other parts were just sort of like boxes, really. So I had to sort of figure out what they looked like a little bit more. But yeah, it made it so much easier. Yeah, I found it really hard because it's in daylight, I had to draw everything. I couldn't hide it all in the shadows. And Jake also struggled with the color. He thinks he doesn't like drawing, he doesn't like color in daylight scenes. But he did a really nice job of it. So it
Yeah, I liked it.
It made it, yeah, definitely felt different to our other things, even though a lot of Reckless is also daytime stuff. Because this was such a small set, rather than like going off into the countryside and stuff, which we've done in the Reckless books, I think it made it much more intimate.
Yeah, it feels really contained, and it somehow both feels really like sprawling and big to me, but also really, really tiny, like like a little diorama of a place. But it's funny, when I was emailing with Jake right when he was starting to color the book, and I told him to color the daytime stuff just like he colors the nighttime stuff, just kind of go crazy with it, not to worry too much because it's daylight. You need to be like staying in the lines or something like that. And I think he did a really great job on this. It still has the mood of his stuff in it. I think.
Oh yeah, I think so too.
Or softer, and I think it's the best thing we've ever done. So
for a man who professes not to like coloring daytime scenes, he is in fact very good at that. When you think of all the great daytime work he's done in the Reckless series, for example, it's really good stuff.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if
we're very lucky, but I'll never tell him that. I'll say we're very lucky to have him, but I'm not going to tell him that.
Yeah, he's way too lazy
He'll
to
never
watch this
interview.
interview.
It'll be okay.
Yeah, he'll never see this interview.
He's too busy.
Yeah. He's got to draw 4 other comics while we're doing this interview.
Right on. He is a busy fellow. I actually, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe my my Monopoly board analogy is pretty flawed. It's more like Clue or Cluedo in many respects, because you've got like rather than a locked room, you've got a neighborhood, and you've got a very particular set of characters as well. So this is a multi-perspective piece of work, right, Ed?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I wanted to do something like this for a long time. Like I love stuff like Tom Perrotta's books, where he often does, like Election, or his recent sequel to that. Or like when I was telling my wife about the book before I started writing it, she was like, "Oh, it sounds like that Shortcuts movie." And I was like, "Oh yeah, kind of." It's like it does have like an indie film of the 90s kind of flavor, where you get little bits and pieces of all these different stories overlapping. What's funny is, like, originally I couldn't come up with the right name for the book. For months I was like kicking around different names, and Sean was trying to figure out how to design a cover without knowing what the name was. And and then I was looking at the map one day, and I saw like item 9 on the legend of the map said where the body was. And I was like, oh, that's a perfect name for it. Like, what was it was right there in front of me the whole time.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember, I think the last time we spoke, you mentioned briefly something I wanted to ask you more about, is that there are elements of the book that, as usual, you're kind of drawing from your own personal history. Yeah, or it's certainly thoughts and feelings that are influenced from things you've been adjacent to. Could you elaborate a bit on that, please, Ed?
Yeah, like the young guy and girl who hang out at the diner all night and do too many drugs and like break into houses and stuff like that. They're sort of loosely based on, some stuff that I was into as a teenager. Certainly that diner is the actual diner that we used to all hang out at all night, which is kind of funny. And then there's a story in the book, I don't want to spoil too much, but there's a story in the book about a psychologist who may or may not want to kill his wife. And that is actually sort of loosely based on a thing that really happened with a guy who my stepdad shared an office with, tried to frame one of his patients for murdering his wife. So, those pretty crazy. It was like one of those stories where you hear it later and you're like, I got to find a place to put that someday. And I've just been kicking around in my head for 20 years. It's like, I need to put that in something. But then in general, just a lot of the book was really, we've been doing these books for 20 years now, 20 something years now. And, like as you get older, you sort of, as a writer, you always write about the same themes or the same ideas over and over again from different angles. but the way you feel about things changes. And as you know, as you go through life and experience loss and you
Yeah,
know,
for
just
sure.
grow up. And I really wanted to do a book that could talk about like love and relationships from a bunch of different angles through different periods of people's lives. And you know, and then also the idea of being able to do things in comics that you can't do in other media, really, like the people turning and just breaking the fourth wall and talking to the camera. And you know, or someone getting, you know, someone, you watching someone live the rest of their life over the course of 2 pages, you know, as they explain a story to you. Like just being able to really use the medium of comics while sort of telling this really weird, I don't know, I guess it's a crime story. It feels more like a romance comic, but there is a murder in it, sort of.
Yeah, I feel that that's something I've
There's a
come
body
to,
in it. Yeah.
yeah, there is a
Yeah.
body in it.
There's a dead body.
I feel that that's something I've come to appreciate more in your work, and maybe it's more that I just notice it now as time has gone on. But as I guess a reader who's aged with you guys as you've been doing this, it's particularly that use of perspective and temporal perspective that you just mentioned that comics allows you to do. You know, you guys seem to me creatively to employ, you know, a lot of techniques that you see there very early on in Will Eisner in his late 40s peak, where he's really playing around with the speed and pace and perspective of things. Except you guys now do it to quite a heightened and sort of comfortable level when you're telling your stories.
Well, it's all about trying to keep yourself engaged with the work, really, because like my biggest fear is that we just start doing the same book over and over again, and you know, and just out of habit, that we're just, you know, like I always want us to be trying to do something that feels different than the thing we just completed. Like I'm sure you could put 5 of our books next to each other and be like, oh, these are very similar, but you know, hopefully not 5 in a row.
Yeah.
Like Night Fever and Where the Body Was feel like very different books to me, but they have elements that are approaching like some of the same themes. So yeah, I think, you know, we've been doing it for so long. Like if we weren't going to be trying to push the envelope a little bit, like why would we keep doing it, sort of,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And we're in a position where, you know, we have the goodwill of like, you know, whatever's left of the industry right now. And so we're kind of in a great position of privilege in that we get to, you know, do graphic novels that actually sell pretty well and, you know, do whatever the hell we want. So like want to take advantage of that as much as possible.
Yeah. I mean, as somebody who publishes comics and retails comics, I think you guys have got an almost, you're sitting in an almost unique space
Yeah.
now, in the sense that you sell to your audience and your audience is growing, but it's not necessarily just comic fans. It's not it. You've got a very broad church of people who are primarily, you know, Brubaker and Phillips fans, I think.
It does feel like we've,
Yeah.
I
Hopefully.
mean, yeah, we've worked at it for a long time. I mean, when we
Wow.
first started Criminal, I used to print out thousands of letters and sign them all and mail them to like mail these packages to retailers all over the world to try to like these, you know, posters I would print off at home and just sort of tell people what we were doing to try to push the book. Because, you know, when we started Criminal, there was probably one other crime comic being published, like 100 Bullets maybe.
Yeah.
And it was a real uphill slog to sort of build an audience. And I think we got lucky in that a lot of the people behind the counter at the stores really appreciated, you know, the amount of, you know, effort we were putting to make a really good book that they could sell to anybody. And those people became fans over time, and you know, and a lot of them have opened their own stores since then. So but yeah, I mean, I often look at it and I'm like, well, everyone should just do what we do. Just keep your head down and do good books over and over again forever. Like as if it's easy. It's like so much pressure every time to
Yeah.
make sure that this book is as good as the one that came before. But you know, that is my theory, is just like we're prolific. So like we just have to try to make sure they're like of a certain level and keep moving forward. And you know, but now I really think about it. It's like we got this book coming out right before Christmas, and part of that was like I want to give retailers like a really good graphic novel that they can sell in December, and it's like, I kind of want to do that every year now for the comics market. It's like to have us put out like a highly sellable graphic novel every Christmas.
Well, I was talking to Rob Pontefract, who's Forbidden Planet's head comics buyer, who you both know, about this, and what the thing we were agreeing about was that you're kind of hitting what in the UK would traditionally be the annual window, for the various like comics annuals for all the big like comics brands. It's like I'm really looking around for a gift for my friend, relative XYZ, who's a big comics fan. What's there? And that sense of event of having your book landing at the beginning of December, I think, is a really clever move.
Well, and our books, I think our books have always been
it's like we planned it, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like we planned it. I think our books too have always been the kind of books that appeal to both hardcore comics fans, because we're obviously like big comics people. So there's always like things about our books that are from that nostalgic tradition of comics, but they're also the kind of books you can just give to anybody. You can buy one of our books and give it to your, grandfather for Christmas, and, who hates comics, and they may even read it. Like that's been the goal all along, is just general readers.
Even my sister reads my books now.
Yeah.
Well, you'd be pleased to hear that I've successfully got my 91-year-old Damon Runyon-loving dad to read several of your graphic novels, the first he's ever written, in his care home, and he's enjoyed them. So, there you go.
Wow.
Yeah, no more sterling endorsement than that. And if you knew how many conversations I'd had with him when I was young about wasting my time reading comic books, it's it's the universal thing, isn't it? But yeah, he's really enjoyed them.
Yeah, my biggest, bucket list item for us is to one day be going through an airport somewhere and see like a bunch of our like criminal graphic novels at the airport bookstore or something.
Right on. That'd be great.
Because then I'll know we've made it. After 20.
And then you can sign them all before you get on your plane, can't you?
Yeah.
You've got that sharp in your pocket all the time. Just
yeah, I would.
As we all know, there are a bunch of people who do actually do that, and
sometimes... and I would move them all to the front counter.
Right on.
Oh yeah.
Redisplay my books.
Yeah,
I do that in every bookshop I go in.
Right on. Yeah.
I judge them by what
I wholeheartedly endorse that. I do that for every comic or magazine I've ever published. So you got to do that. Guerrilla salesmanship. One final question about process, Sean. So last time around on Night Fever, you worked at a completely different size. Did you port that over into this, or did you?
No, I didn't, because for Night Fever, to draw twice up, I had to do it on 2 pieces of paper, so there always had to be a horizontal guide up halfway down the page. And for this book, as well as all our other books apart from Night Fever, it's a 3-tier grid. So to do that extra big is too hard to get it to print it out that big, because I pencil digitally and print it onto paper and then ink on paper. So no, I've gone back to the old ways. So it's just half up now. No, it's not quite as detailed, but I don't think it really matters.
I think, and the new one you're doing 10 by 15, right?
Yeah, the one I'm doing now is slightly bigger. Because I could get some slightly bigger paper through my printer.
Well, that is very interesting, but I'm sure we'll talk about that in the future. My final question about this is, sometimes, Sean, when you've been talking about working from Ed Scripts, it's been you're experiencing the book as you're illustrating it. I wondered, given the nature of this one, if you needed to have more of a sense of the whole of it at the beginning of the process, or whether it's something
No, we work the same way we always work. Ed's
people are mystified by it.
But, it's not a strange thing. I mean, it would be nice to have the whole thing before I started, but it doesn't. I don't think it makes any difference to the final book.
Yeah,
from my point of view, anyway.
I think, and I think because both of us came out of monthly comics, where at best you're you're getting 20 pages at a time. It's like
and that's just what we do now.
Created 3 pages at a time.
And we do our stuff 20 pages at a time. So it's just
Yeah.
just because it comes out in one book.
Yeah,
That's the only
yeah.
difference, really, isn't it?
No, that makes sense. And also, I guess it's about finding a collaborator that you have complete faith in, right? So you guys, over time, you're not sitting there going, "Oh, I wonder what Ed's going to come up with. Oh dear, this is it. What am I going to do?" There seems to be a tremendous amount of trust between the two of you.
Yeah, I mean, I totally trust Ed to do good stuff, but
Yeah.
every time I read the new script, it's like, oh God, how am I going to draw that? But it'd be like that, whoever it was with and whatever it was about. So, that's always the way. Just,
Yeah.
Even if I get like 10 pages or if I get 100 pages of script, it's still like trying to break that down into smaller, manageable chunks for me to not go mad when I'm drawing it.
Yeah, I remember early on when Sean told me he didn't want to know what was coming next when we were working on Sleeper, and I was starting to tell him, we were at like Comic-Con with Michael Lark or in the bar, and I was starting to tell him what was coming in the next issue. He's like, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I'll start worrying about how to draw it.
Yeah.
Like, I'll just find out when I get the pages. Otherwise, then I'll just, as I'm drawing the conversation scene, I'll be dreading that explosion in 3 pages.
Yeah.
That is absolutely fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, I always know as I'm writing the script, Sean never draws things exactly how I think he's going to, but I always have a sense of like, I know I'm never gonna like write a scene where I'm like, oh, I have no idea how he's gonna figure this out. Like, like we've been doing this long enough now that I feel like, I saw your interview with Dave Gibbons where he referred to us as like a single voice, and I do feel like that, like we're like we're closer to, I don't think anyone in comics has done as much as collaboration as we have since like Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Or maybe,
I think
Sergio Aragonés and
Mark, yeah. But I think they've been plowing a very singular furrow throughout the entire time. I think with you guys, you've got your creative relationship in whack, but you experiment a lot and you play around with other genres, or you meld genres and whatnot. There's a lot more. There's a lot more experimentation in terms of what you bring to the table, I think, than the people you just mentioned. As much as I love all those other people.
We definitely have an oeuvre.
You do indeed. Yeah, you do indeed. And are you both still excited by that? I mean, the fact that you don't know what's coming, Sean, and the fact that you don't quite know what Sean's going to illustrate, Ed, do you still feel the creative excitement?
Oh yeah. There's nothing I like more than when my email has pages from Sean, or like when we're working on covers, and like he sent the cover for the next book that comes out next summer, or maybe fall, who knows. And I was just blown away by that, like just like nothing. I immediately like show it to my wife, and it's like, no, this is the greatest. Like everything else that I've done in my career has just been getting us to the point where we can just do books forever and not have to worry about whatever else is happening outside of our work, like, because I feel like that's the most important thing, is just being able to just do our books until we can't do them anymore.
I mean, you're in a truly blessed place that you've created for yourselves, which is that's even better than. What's that, mate?
Yeah. Oh, Sean's totally breaking up now.
Oh yeah, you are. I think
Sean looks like a Savage drawing.
Yeah, I can't hear you. I can't really hear.
Sure, guys, I'm going to use that as the. Oh, there you go.
You've
just reappeared like a thinker.
Sean looks like a Bill Sienkiewicz drawing right now.
All right.
That is very true. That is very true.
Well, Ed's frozen, so I can't.
Yeah,
frozen.
Oh, there you go. You're back again now.
Oh, okay.
Guys, you're frozen again.
The whole time on my side.
In real life, I was moving.
Yeah.
I'm gonna wrap us up there. That is great.
Right.
Thanks for your candor as usual. Thanks for joining me. We have all been discussing Where the Body Was, which is available for order from the links attached to our conversation. It's out this week and next week in the UK, out globally also. And thanks very much for joining me, guys. I know that you've got a number of interesting announcements on the horizon, which I look forward to talking to you about when we get the chance. And in the meantime, I hope you have a very merry Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips Christmas. And I'll see you in the new year.
Thanks for having us.
Take care, guys. All the best. Bye-bye.
I like you have your Charlie Chaplin costume on,
that's
right behind you. Like,
yeah. Well,
like there's a bowler hat and an umbrella.
There's a bowler hat that I never wore, which does fit me.
Yeah.
I think you're hoping more for Steed, weren't you? From the Avengers.
I was, but I'll take Charlie Chaplin. I mean, you know,
they're both British.
I don't look like either of them, so that works for me. Yeah. If you're enjoying watching Forbidden Planet TV and you're enjoying watching us talk to the world's most interesting and accomplished filmmakers, authors, artists, musicians, creators, subscribe right here. See you soon.